We are today this evening, catching up from Shabbos for those that missed, as well as the Daf or the Amud for tonight, which means that we are doing the entirety of Daf Lamed Vav, both Amud Aleph and Amud Beis, and we are going to send the link to Chevra now so that everybody can follow along. There we go. And Gmar Chasim Tov to everybody, hoping that everybody had a beautiful Shabbos Shuvah. It's wonderful to be back learning together, and we are starting from the bottom of Lamed Hey Amud Beis, just at the very bottom of the page. The Gemara was discussing the whether or not you could have a possibility of Isur Chalal Isur. Once you have Chametz on Pesach, so once something is tevel, will it also be because of Chametz on Pesach? And the last four words of the line on Lamed Hey and Beis, the Tanya Rabbi Shimon was of the opinion that if you ate a novela on Yom Kippur, you are pater from eating the novela. It's obviously b'shogig, and pater from a karban of eating novela on Yom Kippur, because the novela was already aser. So the Isser of Yom Kippur cannot fall. You can't have something called the Isser, Chalal Isser. You cannot have one Isser that already is going to jump onto something that already has an Isser. Ravina says, no, you could even say that it goes according to the Rabbanan that say that you can have an Isser, Chalal Isser, because Amar Afil Tamer Rabbanan, you could even say it's the opinion of the Rabbanan. Mi Isru Mishum Baal Taychel Chametz Bilvat. Did it say that this is also Mishum Baal Teichel Chametz Bilvad, that it's also only because of the Isur of Chametz? Yatzazeh she'ein Isur Mishum Baal Teichel Chametz Bilvad. It excludes if you have something that has some level of Isur in the Tevel still there, so it's not only Asur. It's not only Asur because of Chametz. It's also because of something else. And that's why you wouldn't be able to use that for your matzahs. Ela af mishum bal teichel tevel. Maybe it could be that it excludes something that also has an issue of tevel. Says the Gemara immediately b'vagsiv. Hold on a second. Does the pasuk say, or does the Bryce even say that bilvad? No, it just says yatzazeh. It excludes something that has another issue, that has some other issue. So you have to say like Rav Shesha says that this is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. It says ein issue chalal issue. Okay, says the Gemara. This is 6 lines down from the top of the page on Lamed Vav and Aleph. Tana Rabbanan, the Bryce says as follows: Yachol yotze adam yedei chavasa b'maaseh sheni b'Yerushalayim. You might think that a person could fulfill their mitzvah of eating matzah with maaseh sheni, with the second. So the second tithe that they take off, first tithe goes to the Levi, the second goes to either the owner to be eaten in Yerushalayim, or to one of the or to an ani to be eaten by the aniyim. Can you eat your Maaseh Sheni in Yerushalayim? And we said your Maaseh Sheni out of Yerushalayim you cannot eat, but can you eat it in Yerushalayim? Talmud Loimar says the pasuk lechem oni. Pasuk says lechem oni. What does lechem oni mean? Ma'ashenechel ba'aninus. It has to be something that one is allowed to eat in a state of aninus, in a state of sadness between death of a relative and their burial. The person is an onin, and in that state of aninus, you're not allowed to eat from kachim. And this is what the farmer says when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash, and says the Vidoy Machas. He says lechalti ba'oni mimeno. I didn't eat it in a state of aninus. So lechem oni is this would be a drasha in the sound of the word. Lechem oni, something that needs to be able to eat in a state of aninus. That would exclude anything that you cannot eat in a state of aninus. Ela b'simcha, something that you can only eat in a state of simcha. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Akiva tells us matzah is matzah, but the Torah says matzahs many times, and therefore once the pasuk is saying matzahs and matzahs, Im kain, so what does lechamani come to teach you? This excludes bread, meaning a dough that is going to be made into matzah that is kneaded together with yain, with wine, shemen, oil, and dvash and honey. So now the Gemara wants to know, my time of the Rabbi Akiva, what's the rationale behind Rabbi Akiva's opinion? Miksiv lechem oni, does it really say lechem oni with a vav? Oni kasiv. It says oni with a kamatz katan under the ayin. There's no vav in there. Rabbi Yosef clearly. What's the rationale there? Meaning, he says it means a poor man's bread. Poor man's bread meaning it doesn't have rich foods in it like wine, oil, and honey. Rabbi Yosef clearly, according to Rabbi Yosef clearly, mikarin oni. Does it say ani? You don't read it as ani. Oni karina. We read it as if it has a vav, meaning we read it with the kamatz katan. So the word is read as lechem oni. Oni karina. Rabbi Akiva, and according to Rabbi Akiva, the reason that we read it as oni is the famous drasha of Shmuel that we are very familiar with from learning Hilchos Pesach, learning about the Seder. Damar Shmuel, lechem oni, lechem she'onim olav dvarim harbe. Lechem oni means something that you are oni, you declare on it many things. It doesn't mean answer; it means declare. Like the pasuk says by Bikurim va'anisa va'amarta, you will declare and say. It's not an answering a question; it is a declaration. The lechem oni means we are declaring on it many things. Now the Gemara asks a question. According to Rabbi Akiva, any dough that is made for matzahs with wine, oil, and honey, you're not allowed to use that for matzahs. Meaning, because lechem oni, v'hatanya, don't we have a brayso that says ein lashon isa b'Pesach b'yayin shemen dvash. You're not allowed to make your dough for matzahs out of wine, oil, and honey. And if you did, Rabban Gamliel, I meant to serve me out. Couldn't Rabban Gamliel? You have to burn it right away because that dough is going to be machmetz too quickly. It's going to become super chametz. You have to get rid of it immediately. But Chachamim say, yechal, why not? Eat it. Rabbi Akiva says, Shabasi Aisa Eitzel Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Shua. I once spent a yantif. The Rashi there says, meaning I rested there. That means I spent the yantif there by Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua with the Rebbeim of Rabbi Akiva. Velashti lahem isa b'yayin shem and dvash. And I needed dough for matzahs with wine, oil, and honey. But I only doubled, and they didn't say don't. Va'af al pi she'en lashim, and even though one should not, mekatim, you can smooth it over the surface, meaning you can brush it up, right? Like the egg yolks that you put on top of the challah, you can brush on top of your matzahs. So the Gemara then says, well, hold up a second. That's not what Rabbi Akiva was saying. That's what the Tanna Kama was saying, that you're not allowed to do it, but you can brush it on top because if you do a little bit, it's not going to be brushing it on top. The brushing on top is not going to make it super chametz. The Chachamim, according to the Chachamim, whatever you can knead into it, you can put on top. Whatever you cannot knead into it, you cannot put on top. Everybody agrees. Everybody agrees that you cannot use warm water or lukewarm water to make the dough, because that will super duper make it chametz, and that's why we have ma'im shalanu. You have to make sure that you draw the water for the matzahs the night before, the day before, so that it cools off during the night. So now we have a problem because Rabbi Akiva says that it has to be lechem oni, and he says that I made this for my rebbeim, and nobody said that there's a problem. Says the Gemara like kasha, no problem. Habi yom tov rishon, habi yom tov sheni. This is a question of yom tov rishon and yom tov sheni. Are you trying to fulfill your mitzvahs of matzah, or are you just making matzahs to be able to make hamotzion for the rest of the week? In order to fulfill the mitzvah of matzahs, it has to be lechem oni. The rest of the time, it does not. Like Rabbi Yeshua says to his children, Yoma kama lo talushli bechalva. The first day, don't make me matzahs with milk. Mikan ve'elech. For the rest of Pesach, lushli bechalva. You can absolutely make matzahs with milk. Says the Gemara Hatanya. We have a brayso that says in lashon nisa'isa bechalva. You're never allowed to make any kind of dough with milk. V'im lash, and if you did, kala pasasura, you have to get rid of that whole bread. Why? Because somebody's going to come along and put their shwama into your milk bread. Ela hachi kamar. Not, rather what it was saying is Yomi kama. One day, meaning on day one, lo talushli beduvsha. No, it's not chal, he meant duvsha. It's a misrepresentation. He said do it with you can do it with honey. Mikan va'elach. Thereafter lushli beduvsha. You the first day don't make honey in my matzahs. From the second day onwards, you can absolutely put honey in the matzahs. Vibai said alternatively, what he was saying was no, you can always make it with milk. That's totally fine. Kida Amar Ravina, like Ravina taught us, you can make your matzahs with, you can make dough with milk. If it is like the eye of a bull, meaning there's 2 days in Rishonim. Others means something small that's going to be eaten quickly, or something that is a very noticeable shape. Likewise here, it is ke'en Torah. He said, make little muffins in the shape of a bullseye, and that way people know that this is not regular bread. They're not going to use it for something else. This was a big shaila with Thomas English muffins, whether or not they should get an OU, because it would be an OUD. Do people consider them to be bread? Do they consider it muffins? This is a big shaila. Okay, says the Gemara. We are 2 lines down from where the lines get wide. Everybody agrees, said the Braisa, everybody agrees that you cannot make your matzahs with lukewarm water. The Gemara said, hold on a second. The matzahs on Pesach is not the only time that we have to have matzahs. We have to have matzahs every time that you make a korban mincha. But the Braisa, the Mishnah tells us, with regards to menachas, you can absolutely make your menachas with lukewarm water. And the reason that you do it with lukewarm water, not hot water, is so that it doesn't become chametz. Maybe you want to tell me that this is because the Kahana Mazrizim. The Kahana make sure that things get taken care of quickly. They work quickly. They're not sitting around. They are very meticulous. Yomi b'shein zrizim. Yeah. So what are you going to say about the rest of the chevra? For everybody else that has to make matzahs for Pesach, so that's why we're gonna differentiate. If this is so milsas nami losses. So then we should tell you that you're also allowed to soak the grains in water. You can also soak the grains in water, and that would make it into fine flour. If you soak it, to be able to remove some of the bran, in order to make it into better quality flour. So if that's so, you could soak it as well. With regards to the chitin of the menachas, you don't soak them. So we say lisha b'zrizin isa, because so why wouldn't you be able to soak it? Meaning, the Kohanim would be able to make sure that it didn't turn into chametz. Says the Gemara, no, lisha b'zrizim isa. The kneading of the dough, that was done by the Kohanim. L'sisa lesa b'zrizim. But if you were to soak it, that was not necessarily done by the Kohanim. That could be done by anybody else. V'lisha mi isa b'zrizim. This is really true that only the Kohanim were involved in the kneading of the dough. V'aksiv, we have a mefurish pasuk. We had tzaka le'ah shemen, that he will pour oil onto it. V'hivia el hakohen, and then he's going to bring it to the kohen. Says the Gemara, and we learn from this, from the scooping up. That was the kemitza with these 3 fingers. They scooped up the flour to make the menachas. From that point onwards, from the point on there was flour, that was the mitzvah of the kohanim. Limit al yitzika uvlila, which means that everything up into pouring, up to and including pouring the oil into the flour, uvlila. And mixing it, everybody's allowed to do such a thing. So we say lisha nahi de b'zrizin leisa. You say no, it's true. Lisha nahi b'zrizin leisa. You could have somebody else kneading the dough, but bimkom zrizin isa. But it was in the Beis Hamikdash, in the place of the Kohanim. So there was a lot of supervision there. There were people saying, "Let's go, let's go." It didn't just sit around. So the Amar Mar, because like the Maseches is one of the Amoraim, that mixing the menachas was kosher even with a non-kohen. It could be done outside of the azara, outside of the walls of the Beis Hamikdash. But if it was outside of the walls of the Beis Hamikdash, psula, then it's possible. Now, as opposed to soaking the grains, the end was rizin, which was never done, it didn't need to be done in the Beis Hamikdash, and it was not done with the kohanim, by the kohanim. Says but the minchas ha'omer, when they brought the korban ha'omer on the second day of Pesach, the Tanya minchas ha'omer loitzim oisa v'tzavrin oisa, with regards to the minchas ha'omer loitzim oisa, they soaked it v'tzavrin oisa, and they piled it up. So we say tzibur shani. That is different because that was a korban hatzibur. That was the korban hatzibur, which meant that they did it all the way from the time of harvesting. They harvested the grain that was in public. There was everybody was involved. That was b'makom shizim. So we say that even though it was a mincha soimer. Tan Rabbanan, continuing, the Brisa says 5 lines from the bottom of the page. Lamed Vav Amud Aleph. Yachol Yotze Ad Midei Chavas Bikurim. Maybe you can fulfill your mitzvah of matzah with bikurim. Talmud Loimar, the pasuk tells us, "B'chol ma shvesechem tachlu matzahs." In all of your places, you will have to eat matzahs. Matzah hanechelas b'chol ma shvesechem. Matzah has to be something that could be eaten wherever you are. That excludes something like bikurim that can only be eaten. That cannot be eaten in all of your dwellings. Can only be eaten by the kohanim. Ela b'Yerushalayim, in Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yossi Aglili. This is Rabbi Yossi Aglili's opinion. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Akiva tells us matzah umara. No, the pasuk says matzah umara, meaning that these two things go together. Ma'amara she'en b'bikurim, af matzah she'en b'bikurim. How do I know that I cannot have matzah coming from bikurim? Because just like marar doesn't have bikurim, meaning it's a vegetable, there's no bikurim. Af matzah, therefore the matzah has to be in such a way that there's no bikurim from it, meaning it's not bikurim. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. If so, Mara doesn't have bikurim. There's no bikurim that you can make from Mara. It's not like the Torah is telling you that you can't use matzah that came from bikurim. There's no such thing. Av matzah she'ein b'min bikurim. So it should be that matzah should have to come from something that doesn't have bikurim. So this is va'otzi chitin and which takes out chitin and sorim, which means wheat and barley, which means you don't have matzah. That means that you can make those are the two species that you make matzah out of, and we had learned that all the subspecies, all warbs, come from chita and soira. Talmud Loimar says the pasuk says Rabbi Akiva, matzahs riba. It includes all different kinds of matzahs. So matzah maro tells me that it can't come from bikurim, and matzahs tells me that it comes from chita and soira. Says the Gemara, matzahs riba. If this is true, that matzahs includes chitin and sarim, I feel bikurim nami. Then it can also include bikurim. Says the Gemara, Hadar Bei Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva retracted his opinion. 3 lines down from the top of Lamed Vav Amud Beis, says the Gemara, we have a proof that Rabbi Akiva retracted his opinion with a long brisa. The time. Brisa says as follows: maybe you could fulfill your mitzvah of matzah with bikurim. Talmud Loimar, the pasuk says, in all of your dwellings you have to eat matzahs, and the limit that we learned before, that anything that cannot be eaten in all places means that it excludes bikurim. Ela b'Yerushalayim can only be eaten in Yerushalayim. Yachol shani motzi av matzah sheni. Maybe that should also exclude matzah sheni, which can only be eaten in Yerushalayim. Talmud Loimar, matzahs. Therefore, the pasuk tells me matzahs. It includes many matzahs. Riba, that's an inclusion. Mara Isa. Now the Gemara questions. Mara Isa l'Rabbas matzah sheni. Why do you include matzah sheni lahotzi bikurim and exclude bikurim? I include matzah sheni that could in there be eaten in all dwellings. Like Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. And I'm excluding bikurim that can only be eaten in Yerushalayim. Because this is the limit of Rabbi Eliezer. How do I know that matzah sheni that became tameh that I can redeem it even in Yerushalayim? And then I'd be able to eat it outside of Yerushalayim. Talmud Loimar, the pasuk says, you cannot take it. And se'es means eating, meaning you are unable to eat it. The pasuk in Bereshis that he took mas'os from before him means something to eat. Who holds like this? The Amr Maseches Sheni Nafik Bay that you can fulfill the obligation of the Maseches Sheni. Rabbi Akiva. This is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. And yet he excludes bikurim from the pasuk b'chol mashasechem. Shmamina hadar. And this is the proof that he agrees with the opinion b'chol mashasechem is teaching me that bikurim are excluded, and he retracted from his opinion of learning from the Hekesh of Matzah and Mara. Okay. And according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, which he learns from B'chol Mashasechem, why doesn't he learn it from Lechem Oini? That would also be a good reason to say that bikurim are excluded. Why? Because lechem oini means bread of affliction and sadness, and bikurim can only be eaten instead of simcha. Saba like Rabbi Shimon, he holds like the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. The Tanya, according to Rabbi Shimon, bikurim asum la'onin. The bikurim are also for an oinin. Bikurim are also for an oinin. Rabbi Shimon matir. Rabbi Shimon says the bikurim are mutar for an oinin. The kohen that is in a state of aninus is allowed to eat bikurim. In my time of the Rabbanan, what's the opinion of the Rabbanan? You cannot eat it in your gates. V'amamar trumas yadecha elu bikurim. That you cannot eat it in your gates. V'amamar, and one of the Amoraim teaches us trumas yadecha, that which you lift up with your hands. Elu bikurim. This is talking about the bikurim. The ifkish bikurim le'maiser, and bikurim are connected to maiser. The pasuk, my maiser asala oinen, af bikurim asala oinen. Just like maiser is not allowed to be eaten by an oinen, bikurim are also not allowed to be eaten by an oinen. Rabbi Shimon, according to Rabbi Shimon, truma karina rachmana. The Torah calls bikurim truma. Ki truma, just like truma. My truma muteras oinen, af bikurim muter oinen. Bikurim are compared not to ma'aser, they're compared to truma, and truma is allowed to be eaten by a kohen in a state of aninus. According to Rabbi Shimon, the hekesh leiste. Okay, he doesn't have the hekesh of bikurim to ma'aser. Simcha mi u'michtav behu, but he does hold that the pasuk says about bikurim that they need to be eaten in a state of simcha, right? Because the pasuk says when you bring the bikurim. That means in a state of simcha. You have to be with simcha when you have the bikurim. Says the Gemara, no. According to Rabbi Shimon, that is for the time of simcha. Didnan, because the Brisa tells us, the Mishnah, sorry, from Atzeres, from Shavuos v'ad Chag until Sukkot, maybe Vikari. You bring your bikurim and you read out the psukim, Aramiyah, Vedavi, etc. May Chag ad Chanukah, from Sukkot until Chanukah, maybe ve'enakare, you bring the bikurim ve'enakare, and you do not read out the psukim. Tana Rabbanan in the Brisa says, meaning is telling me a time period. It's not telling me a state that I need to eat it in. Tana Rabbanan, the Brisa says, lechem oini, bread of pomegranates bread, prat chalut ve'ashisha. That excludes chalut, which is some very rich bread. Ashisha, which is also very rich bread. Chalut is some, Rashi says, chashiv bread. Ashisha is gluskudal, big breads. So it seems that chalut is with some chashiv flour, and ashisha is size. Yachal, you might think maybe you would think that you can only fulfill matzah with very coarse flour. Talmud Lomar says the pasuk, matzahs, lots of matzahs. Reba, it includes lots of different kinds. Even like Shlomo Melech matzahs, meaning super duper fine flour, white flour matzahs. This is what we eat today. Im kain, if this is so, Talmud Lomar lechem oni. What does lechem oni mean? Prat lechalut le'ashisha. It excludes chalut and ashisha. These very chashiv breads, very chashiv doughs. Mashma daha ashisha lishna de chashivus. How do you know that the word ashisha means chashiv? Because the pasuk says, "Ve'chalek lechol ha'am lechol haman Yisrael mi'ish v'ad isha leish chalas lechem achas ve'eshpar achas ve'ashisha achas." This is David Melech was distributing to the chevra when they were bringing the Aaron, that he was distributing all of this good stuff for everybody. And it includes the ashisha achas. Amar Rav Chanan bar Abba says, Rav Chanan bar Abba, eshbar echad mi shisha b'par. The eshbar in the pasuk is 1/6 of a bull. It's a big steak. Ashisha echad mi shisha be'efa is 1/6 of an ephah of flour. Meaning, so ashisha means echad mi shisha. That's what ashisha means. And this is the disagreement of Chanan Arba. Is disagreement of Shmuel. The Amar Shmuel says, "Ashisha garba de chamra." Ashisha means a cask of wine. Dichsiv ohavei ashishe anavim. That's what the pasuk means. Ohavei ashishe anavim, those that love grapes. So ashishe anavim is a reference to wine. And Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we will continue from the Tana Rabbanan at the bottom of Lamed Vav Amud Beis tomorrow. A Gemar Chasim Tova to everybody, and we will see you then.